It is.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and
to
to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
and now the Texas flag.
I, with the Texas flag, I pledge the allegiance to the Texas,
One state, under God.
one individual. I have
You
to,
started, and I'm like, wait.
but we finished.
Oh, okay, so. Here you go, Chauncey.
I'll land it now.
Please,
I already sang that at noon.
don't.
I'm going every day at noon.
Now we got a prayer.
Oh, dear Lord, we thank you for this group coming together. Lord, give us the ability to help others. That is our goal. And we pray for our speaker today that she got here safely, and please let her return home safely. Amen.
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 All right.
All right.
Okay, there's your sign up sheet right there.
Yes, I could introduce you. I got all the information or.
I can introduce myself if you
Good.
want me to. That's okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Hi, everyone. My name is Shauna Jefferson, also known as Chef Shauna, and I am the executive chef and owner of Chefs for Seniors North and Southeast Houston Metro. Chefs for Seniors is a national franchise, and I own the franchise territory that covers this entire area: Kingwood, Atascocita, Humboldt, Porter, Spring, the Woodlands, Conroe, the entire north side, plus Southeast Houston, Pearland, Pasadena, and League City.
Oh.
I'm the only franchise currently operating in the Houston area, which means I pretty much go everywhere as a chef who can drive there. What we do is our goal is to help seniors to maintain their independence and to improve their quality of life by providing them with healthy meals prepared in the comfort of their homes. So our mission is to improve seniors' lives through food. We're basically helping them to age in place. One of the things that seniors actually struggle the most with is getting access to healthy meals. A lot of seniors are on a waiting list for Meals on Wheels, or for whatever reason, Meals on Wheels just doesn't fit their palate. They may have special dietary restrictions and needs. So that's where we come in. I don't deliver meals, so I deliver the chef. So I have a team. I have a team of chefs work for me, and what we do is we will do the grocery shopping, and then we will go to our homes. I provide all of my chefs with their own equipment, so everyone has literally a kitchen on wheels. Everything in their toolbox enables them to prepare 4 dishes in the comfort of the senior's home. From those 4 dishes, they'll end up with about 12 to 14 servings. We'll package them, label them, put them in the refrigerator, clean up the kitchen, provide a little companionship while we cook, because for some of our clients, maybe their family members may live out of town, or their family members are just, too busy to stop by on a regular basis. So a lot of them look forward to their homebound. They look forward to their visit from their chef. And all of my clients, our goal is to treat them like their beloved family members. I've been doing this for almost 7 years. So it'll be 7 years in November since I opened the franchise.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How often do they go, like, say you're coming to my house? How many days a week, or is it just once a week?
It can be once a week. It can be every other week. Some clients use them every 3 weeks, once a month, just depending on their needs and their budget.
Okay, but you cook. When the chef is there, you cook for that day?
We meal prep for the entire week or whatever span of time. So,
Wow.
for example, most of my married couples who still have pretty significant appetites, they'll use the service every week. Because the chef will come every week, because 12 to 14 servings, that's breakfast and lunch. Lunch and dinner.
Lunch and dinner, not breakfast, okay?
We do have breakfast
Okay.
items. It's up to our clients what they select for us to prepare. Our menu has over 125 items on it, just our standard menu. And then we also have custom menus that we've developed for people with special conditions, like people who are on a renal diet and they need low potassium, they have kidney disease. They need a low potassium. There's some people who are recovering from cancer and they are undergoing cancer treatments and they want a special diet. People with Parkinson's who are having trouble swallowing. So their meals, we have to chop everything up, make them mechanical sops. People need puree meals. So whatever their needs are, we accommodate those needs. So for clients, there's some clients though, like my single clients, they're only looking for help with their dinners. So 12 to 14 servings, that's their dinner for 2 weeks. So the chef will come every other week and the client will freeze half the meals. And then the next week after they've eaten half, they'll just move the other half to the refrigerator. And so that's how the service works. So we become our client personal chefs. We adapt our cooking style, we adapt everything to whatever their needs and their taste buds are. So cool. Yes, okay.
You can cater special events like birthday parties or.
If they are at our clients' homes, yes, or if they are at a facility where there's a kitchen where we can cook everything on site. I do have access to a commercial kitchen that I can rent if it is an event that doesn't have a kitchen on site, but that's really not my preference because it's gonna end up costing more.
So it allows the seniors to host events.
Yes. So I have seniors over the years, they've hired us to, cater dinner parties at their homes, do their Thanksgiving meals. They have family coming in for Thanksgiving. We prepare Thanksgiving meals, we prepared Christmas dinners. For my clients who are not seniors, I have one client, she just had her 3rd baby. She had us come in and we catered her baby shower. So whatever we can do, as long as there's a kitchen there on site, we can come in and we can cater events, dinner parties as well. So that is one piece of what I do, the biggest piece of what I do. The second piece of what I do is coming to speak to or audiences like you. I partner with several different organizations in the community, and I'll go to senior centers, and this is where my cooking demonstrations do come in. I'm usually out and about, and I will do cooking demonstrations at 55+ senior communities at both the city of Houston, but then Harris County, their community centers for their senior programs as well. I partner with Centerwell and Oak Street, which are both Medicare. They specialize in primary care, Medicare services to seniors. So that's the way I get out into the community, and I still help to improve seniors' lives through food, because not everybody can afford our service, although it is pretty affordable. But for some people on a fixed income, it just doesn't work for them. Or I have lots of people who still love to cook. They just want to know how to do it healthier. And so that's why I go out into the community and educate on healthy cooking habits, cooking tips. And so that's what brings me here to you today. Is I'm going to spend some time sharing some information about salt and fat. 2 things that have get a bad rap, but our bodies need them. Our bodies need sodium and our bodies need fat. The key is to make healthy choices when selecting which salt to use and which fat to use. So I'm just gonna, as you can see, I've set up a variety of items here that I'm gonna talk about. This is meant to be interactive, so please feel free to stop me and ask me questions as we go along, okay? All right, and I've given all of you a handout as well, which has a lot of helpful information about, one side talks about salts, the other side talks about the fats, so the cooking oil. So I'm gonna start my presentation with talking about the salt piece of things, the salt side of things. Whenever I go out, I get lots of questions from people on, okay, well, which is better? I heard sea salt is better, or pink Himalayan salt, or table salt is bad, all these different things. And the thing is, all salts are not created equal. And the answer is, it really depends on what is most important to you and what you are monitoring. Pink Himalayan salt, sea salt, kosher salt, iodized table salt. The thing is, they all have sodium in them. And they all have varying amounts of sodium. It's gonna totally depend on the reading the label. So I'm gonna show you that. So we start off with our table salt. It's one ingredient, NaCl, sodium chloride. Comes from the ground. There are no additional minerals or nutrients in it. However, they have iodized. So back in the day, people had lots of trouble. Here in the United States, we don't have this issue as much, but in other parts of the world, they still have a problem with not getting enough iodine in their diet, and it's causing a condition called goiter. And so usually though, for us, we here in the States get enough iodine from what we eat. So that's why we're able to actually use the pink Himalayan salt, the sea salt, and the kosher salt, which are not iodized, because those are other sources of iodine. But iodine is added to our table salt. A serving size of salt, no matter what kind you use, is 1/4 of a teaspoon. So if you're looking and you're monitoring your sodium levels, a 1/4 teaspoon of table salt has 590 milligrams of sodium in it. So to help you put that in context, if you're over the age of 55, or if you are African American, or if you have high blood pressure, the American Heart Association recommends that your maximum amount of sodium per day should be somewhere between 1,500 and 2,200 milligrams of sodium. So a 1/4 teaspoon of table salt is 590 milligrams. So if you're going easy math, 1,500, this is 1/3 and a 1/4 teaspoon. Now, keeping in mind though, usually when you season your meals with salt, if you were seasoning as you cook, you add a 1/4 teaspoon to whatever dish you're making, that's gonna go across 4 or 5, several servings. So you're not really getting into a lot of trouble using the table salt. That's if you use a 1/4 teaspoon, but the problem is we don't know how to stop it. It's just a 1/4 teaspoon. And the other thing is usually people keep table salt, that's what we call table salt, where? On the table. They sprinkle it on their food. Problem is not measuring as they sprinkle it on their food. And I know people who don't taste their food. They sprinkle salt before even tasting it to see if the food needs salt. And so they're not keeping track of how much salt they're adding to their food on top of whatever sodium may already be in the food. There are things that we eat on a regular basis that are high in sodium that don't necessarily taste really salty, like for example, bread. Bread is high in sodium. Bagels are high in sodium. All of the salt is a preservative. So all of the things that you're pulling off of the shelf in the grocery store, most of them are going to have salt added to them because it preserves whatever the food is. So we have our table salt. Then we come to kosher salt. Yes, sir.
In regards to that 1/4 tablespoon, how does that compare to a chef's pinch of salt? Where they take 3 fingers and go like
A 1/4 tablespoon is going to be more than a pinch.
more than a pinch?
It's more than a pinch. Yeah. I usually have a 1/4 tablespoon so you can see, but a 1/4 tablespoon as you're looking at the spoon is usually about this size.
So 2 pinches.
It's probably several pinches. And once again, you also always have to pay attention to what kind of salt the chef is using. So this moves me, and that's a great segue because this moves me to kosher salt. When I went to culinary school, that's where I discovered kosher. I did use a little bit beforehand, but chefs, when we're cooking in a professional kitchen or even now cook, I always use kosher salt. I don't ever cook table salt. Kosher, and usually it's coarse kosher salt.
Where is that from? Is Avery Island, this culture?
This kosher salt, so Morton coarse kosher salt, you can find this at HEB. This diamond crystal, actually this box, it used to be, you couldn't find it anywhere. Now HEB has started selling diamond crystal, coarse kosher salt, which I actually prefer to use if you're comparing sodium as well. and this goes to all salts are not created equal as far as sodium is concerned. Kosher salt is once again just sodium chloride, no minerals, no nutrients. It's rock salt. But the flakes are larger. So a quarter teaspoon of the this is the important coarse kosher salt, is 480 milligrams. So a little bit less than the table salt. But the diamond crystal kosher salt is 280 milligrams of sodium. So there's less sodium in a quarter teaspoon of the diamond crystal kosher salt. Then I have just this Kroger brand, this is HEB brand kosher salt. This has 510 milligrams of sodium. But guess what? They're all kosher salt. They're all kosher. All the same kind of salt with different amount of sodium. This is flake style kosher salt. It's not quite as coarse. It's from my favorite spice shop called Penzies, located in the Heights. This is 280 milligrams.
Love Penzies.
Yeah, our favorite place. 280 milligrams of sodium. So the thing is, what I'm trending towards getting you all to see is you have to read your labels. Just because it's salt, you can't just assume it's going to have the same amount of sodium per serving. Now, what that does mean and what is happening nowadays, more and more recipes that I read and come across, they're actually telling you what kind of salt they've used in the recipe. So they will say half a teaspoon of diamond crystal or Morton kosher salt. But then they'll put a note there saying, if you're going to use table salt, use half as much. What you're doing is you're getting the same amount of sodium, because if you were to use half a teaspoon of table salt, that is going to double the amount of sodium that you're putting into your food. So that's your kosher salts. Then we get to the salts that have become extremely popular these days. Everybody's talking about using sea salt or using pink Himalayans. Okay, so for these, I'll start with your sea salt. So once again, it comes in different sizes. These are fine crystals. This is sea salt. These are coarse crystals. The fine crystals, the amount of sodium is exactly the same as the amount of table salt. It is 590 milligrams. This coarse is 550 milligrams. So not a big difference, but they're both sea salt. Here's another coarse sea salt. This is 500 milligrams. This is gray sea salt. So believe it or not, there's different colors of sea salt, just depending on which sea the salt comes from. Sea salt is basically, they've taken seawater and they evaporate it and they get the salt from the water. So that's how sea salt is produced. And that's why sea salt has minerals in it that salt from the ground does not have, because that seawater, as it evaporates and it creates the salt, you're getting those minerals from the seawater. So that is the benefit that people are looking for.
So that's a good thing.
So that's a good thing. Yes, that's a good thing. So, and on your sheet that I handed out, it actually does show you the mineral composition of different salt varieties. So for example, if you're having leg cramps and you're low on your potassium, you may want to switch to using Himalayan sea salt, because you're getting 0.28% of potassium serving in there. Whereas if you were to use table salt, you're only getting 0.09% of potassium. So just something to think about. Some of the salts, like sea salt, Celtic sea salt, has 0.17% calcium. There's minimal, almost no calcium in table salt. There's no magnesium, there's no iron. But as you look at this, Celtic sea salt is 0.3% of magnesium. So it has magnesium, potassium, and calcium in it. Same thing for the Himalayan salt. So you're just getting additional minerals. Not a whole lot. They're basically still a little bit higher than trace amounts, but it's better than nothing. Yes, sir.
On the sea salt where it's made by evaporating seawater.
Mhm.
Seawater can be pretty funky sometimes. Are they have any way of getting impurities out of that?
I'm sure I'm sure that there is a whole process that I'm not aware of how the process actually works. But yeah, I'm sure there is a whole process. It's probably have some regulations around how they go about it.
Yeah. A lot of fish poop at sea.
So if you're uncomfortable with the idea of what kind of contaminant in sea salt, that still want access to minerals. That's why this is rock salt, so it does come from the earth, but it has, because it is literally comes from these large quarries of pink rock. There are additional minerals in Himalayan salt that you don't get from the rock salt that comes from the earth for the kosher salt or for the iodized salt. But once again, it's not all created equal. I have 3 different types of pink Himalayan salt here. And this one is a fine grain Himalayan salt, so it's got a texture like table salt, 270 milligrams of sodium. This rock salt here that you're basically using as a salt grinder, 380 milligrams of sodium. This one is porous, it's very porous actually. This one, 460 milligrams of sodium in a quarter teaspoon. And this one is, once again, it's very fine. This one is 540 milligrams. So you have 2 types of pink Himalayan salt that are both fine, but this one has twice as much sodium per serving than this. I have no idea why. I think it has something to do with the way they process it, the way they mine it. The only way for you to truly, really understand and know how much additional sodium you're putting in your body when you season your food is to read your labels and to measure. So hopefully after today, gone are the days where you're just gonna pick a lot of the salt off of the shelf. It's just a matter of educating yourself. So let's talk about seasonings. I'm still on salt here, but let's talk about other popular ways we may season our food and what we use to season them with. All right, so chicken broth, bouillon cubes, things like that. Better than bouillon. It's very popular. I used to use it a lot when I was younger because I loved the flavor of it. But the roasted chicken base better than bouillon, and basically it's a serving size is 1 teaspoon added to 1 cup of water usually, which gives you 1 cup of broth. It's 680 milligrams in a cup. So if you're making a pot of soup, consider to get 4 servings of soup. Usually it's about 4 cups, about a quarter of broth that you're going to use. So if you were to season with the better than bouillon, you're adding 1 teaspoon to a cup. And let's say your serving sizes are going to be a cup of soup. So you get 4 servings of soup. You're basically putting in 680 milligrams of sodium in a serving, just because of the way you season with this. Now you do less, of course. It won't be quite as salty, and then you can use other things like herbs and spices, lemon juice, things like that to bring the flavor up. So 680 milligrams. This is what I love to use. It's something called Herbox. It is sodium free. So there's no sodium chloride in this at all. But if you taste it, it still tastes salty. And that's because they use potassium chloride instead. So this is sodium free. I love to add it and use it instead of the better than bouillon because I'm not adding any salt. This works out perfectly for anyone except people who have kidney issues. And if they have kidney issues, they've got too much potassium in their body, which means this is not a good option for those people, but a good option for everyone else. And then, of course, you also see there's salt substitutes, new salt, no salt on the shelf. those are using potassium chloride as opposed to sodium chloride. This here says it's 50% less sodium. And the ingredients are sea salt, sea minerals like potassium chloride and magnesium sulfate, and then magnesium carbonate. So that's what they're using. So it still tastes just as salty as regular salt, but it has less sodium in it. So this is 270 milligrams. So they're not lying. There is 50% less sodium in this than what you would find in table salt. When you're reading your labels, low sodium is regulated by the government. So there's a certain percentage daily value for something that something has to be, and I think it's between 5 and 10% for them to be able to put a label that says low sodium. So what you will usually see companies do is they'll just say less sodium. So for example, I've got some soy sauce here. This says less sodium. Even at less sodium, in 1 tablespoon is 660 milligrams. That's less sodium.
That's less than what?
Less than the regular soy sauce. I don't have my sample bottle with me, but off the top of my head, it's usually around 900 and something milligrams in a tablespoon of regular soy sauce. So
I'm one of these people that can taste salt. I rarely salt my food.
you really salt your food.
And if I do, I use sea salt. In fact, if I order steak out, I order no salt or no salt seasoning on it because I can taste it instantly.
Mhm. And most people, I've had a lot of clients, and I would tell them, especially if they're coming out of the hospital, had heart issues or blood pressure issues or stroke, and the doctors has told them to go either no sodium or low sodium. I always ask them, okay, how were you eating before? If they were still kind of eating fairly healthy before and using lower sodium, they can make that transition. But if they have to go cold turkey from just seasoning everything with salt to using very little or none at all, it is very difficult for them to stick with it. And so what I have to encourage them to do is to give your taste buds about 6 to 8 weeks. That's all it takes. Salt and sugar, both. Give 6 to 8 weeks for your taste buds to get used to it. And I guarantee it, after that, your taste buds will become a lot more sensitive.
I see you
to
got
salt.
Tony's,
Yeah, so
no salt.
yes. So this is the thing, Tony Saturated. Everybody loves to sprinkle Tony Saturated on thing. And actually, this is not so bad. This original Creole is just 350 milligrams of sodium in a quarter teaspoon. But here's the problem. Is with Tony Saturated, depending on your spice tolerance and how much spice you're trying to add. If you want bold seasoning, a quarter teaspoon is not going to be enough. You're going to add a whole lot more Tony's.
Love your mama.
Yeah, you're going to add a whole lot more Tony's, which means you're adding a whole lot more salt. So you're better off using the no salt version just to get that additional bold seasoning, bold flavor, and then just add your salt it to your taste bud preferences. So you're not going to go overboard with the Tony Saturated.
When you cook for these seniors, do you do a healthcare profile on them before you start making their meals?
So
Thinking particularly of allergies and sensitivities of blood sugar and diabetics.
yes. So with every senior that we intake, we are not healthcare professionals, but we do ask those questions so we will know how to adapt the food to their dietary restrictions. I will always ask about their dietary restrictions. I will always ask food allergies or food sensitivities. And then on top of it, I have a 7-page food questionnaire that everyone fills out. And it goes through just about every ingredient that we may use, and I'll ask them whether they love it, like it, willing to try, or no thanks. So that way we get to know our clients. And then I'll ask them other questions when I onboard them, like how do they like their vegetables cooked? What kind of seasonings do they use when they cook, if they're still cooking? how they like their food season. Are they bland, which means they don't really add any additional salt? Is it moderately seasoned, or do they like bold New Orleans style? So I will ask all of those questions, so we can come as close as we can at the very beginning and preparing the meals how they like it. But I always tell our clients is it's gonna take the chefs some time sometimes to get to know their palate. So think of it, the analogy I use is if you're a ballroom dancer and you get a new partner, it just takes a while for the two of you to get that rhythm. So same thing with our chefs and get to know them. But I do ask them all of those questions up front. So that we will know. And by default, for most of our chefs, even if a client says they have no dietary restrictions or whatever, unless they specifically tell us that they have a problem with low sodium, which some of our clients do, we are usually going to still go in and use all products that are all low sodium. And then it's up to them to tell us, okay, no, we need a little bit more flavor, a little bit more salt, which if they ask for it, we will do it, because you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force the horse to drink. And at least this way, they still know what's going in their food, and it's still going to be healthier than a lot of stuff that they're buying off the shelf or out of the freezer section.
Yeah, I was raised high school and college in New Orleans. And their food is not, the average gauge of food is not real salty.
No.
It's not super spicy, it's not hot with pepper. But it's that's what I was raised on, and I have a hard time eating over here. Gumbo especially, usually way too salty for me.
Yeah, because there are other things. Well, first of all, it's probably because they're using unsaturated seasoning in their gumbo. And you really don't have to use that with gumbo. If you make your roux correctly with a gumbo, that's where you're getting all your flavor from, is your roux. But that's assuming you're making your roux from scratch and you're not buying the roux out of the jar. I don't know if you've ever looked at the ingredients in the roux that you buy in a jar. They have added salt and so much other stuff to it. But if you start with your roux as your base, that's where you're going to get all of your flavor from, and then your filet at the end, and then somewhere in between you may add a little salt. But depending on what kind of meat you're using, if you're doing sausage, cooking the sausage in the gumbo is going to add additional saltiness to it. So as a chef, and even people who are just experienced cooks, you think about all of these things as you were putting together a meal. And the other thing that I tell people is when salting your food, salt as you cook, because you're going to use less salt. Because here's the deal. If you add your salt, you shake it on later, what ends up happening is the salt sits on top of your food as opposed to permeating your food. But if you start at the beginning, and I actually salt in layers. So let's say I'm cooking something and I'm starting off with my onions, my celery, my garlic, and I'm cooking that in some olive oil. I will salt that just a little. I'll use a pinch of salt it just a little, and then whatever the next thing that I'm adding. So let's say I'm making something with tomatoes. When I add my tomatoes to it, I may add another pinch of salt when I add that next ingredient, the tomatoes. And of course, if it's tomatoes, I'm going to add a pinch of sugar too, cut the acidity of the tomatoes. So as I build, I'm adding just a little. So over the course of the entire dish, I'm still using the same total amount of salt, but because I'm adding it in stages, at each stage that it's permeating. So it tastes just as good, just as flavorful, without having just dumping in a lot of salt at the end. Yeah, which is the way people tend to cook. The last thing is my actual seasonal choice, and people like to use Lowry seasoned salt and things like that. I'm not a fan at all. But there is something that I love to use. It's called Spike seasoning. You can get it at Kroger and HEB. You just kind of have to hunt for it in the spice department. I love this seasoning because it's a great all-purpose seasoning. It has just about every herb, dried herb you could possibly think of in it. And the other reason why I like it is it's only 160 milligrams of sodium in a quarter teaspoon. But you get a lot of great bold flavor without adding the additional sodium to it.
Where would you put that in?
I put it in everything. I put it in just about everything that I cook. Instead of anything that I would use salt, I use this instead. So I will season my meat with it. I will, whatever I'm cooking, I will use that. Use the spice. My eggs, it's great. It's great with everything. Oh, then the other thing I wanted to talk about before I move to the oils is something else I've discovered that is a huge time saver, but once again, you gotta read your label. I don't know if you've seen these microwave rice. And in particular, if you are wanting to eat brown rice, which takes about 45 minutes to cook, if you're cooking it from dry form, and most people give up because they say it's kind of crunchy. I mean, different things happen with cooking brown rice. So you can get these microwave packets of rice. This is Uncle Ben's, but there's lots of different. Minute Rice makes them. And they're different kinds. So I've got brown basmati here. They make white basmati. They make long grain. They make brown rice, jasmine rice, all in a microwave packet. This is usually 2 cups of rice. It's done in 90 seconds in your microwave. And you have your rice, it's done. But the key is you got to stick with just the plain rice if you are watching your sodium. So this brown basmati rice, 0 milligrams of sodium. Now, you go for the whole grain medley or the long grain and wild rice. You're boosting your sodium. For 1 cup, this is 300 milligrams of sodium. For this one, 1 cup is 400 milligrams of sodium. So avoid any of the flavored rices, but these are great to use. And I keep these on hand all the time. I just stick them in the microwave and they come out great. All right.
I have a question. We use those a lot in Boy Scouts and in survival rationing.
Which the rice?
Right. And what I always have to tell people is that anytime you have one of those, you have to have a source of protein. Because that's almost all starch. You usually have to put in either a 5-ounce can of tuna or a 5-ounce can of chicken. The 5-ounce can of tuna has 9 protein. 5-ounce can of chicken has only 5. How do you recommend that? And also, in terms of people who are doing strenuous work in heated environments and they're dehydrated, isn't it beneficial to have those higher increases to replace
Your electrolytes.
they're sweating out?
Yeah, so when you're talking about, so if we veer away from seniors and we're talking about people who are younger and more active, it's gonna be different. The advice may be slightly different, or the way even we cook for them, because I do have some younger clients who are measuring their macros and doing all of those sorts of things. And so, yes, we cook very differently for them than we cook for our seniors, from the perspective of maybe we are not so worried about how much sodium we put in it, but we still try to get them balanced meals.
Because we're educated on making your own rations, made MREs, where you can just take a large bag, you put one of those things in there, small can of tuna, some
And some beans for fiber.
beans, right, for vegetable protein, but also some comfort foods like hot chocolate and coffee and whatever. Any recommendations on the applications of this technology to survival rations, specifically for hurricanes?
So this is where, salt is a preservative. So depending on what you're packaging and how long you want it to last, you probably are going to have to add, from a salt perspective, a little more salt to it as a
Those little packets were half a salt, and half a,
pepper, yeah.
tell them to put 2 of those.
Kudos, okay, then that should, and then that should be, that should be fine. Yeah, that should be fine. And if there is someone who does have heart issues or things like that, they just need to add the pepper instead of adding the salt. Now, some other things that you can do is put the little packets of lemon juice. You can buy lemon juice in packets just like you buy ketchup. Lemon juice, lime juice, our sour taste buds are very close or similar to our salty taste buds. So by adding lemon juice or lime juice or vinegars to our meals, you can add those. You're going to boost the flavor, but you're not adding the sodium, and they still act as preservatives.
Vitamin C.
Yeah, and you're getting the vitamin C from it. So those are some other options of things that you can that you can add. Low fat or low fat mayonnaise can also be an option, especially if it's like an olive oil mayonnaise, like in a packet or whatever. Peanut butter. They make peanut butter in the little cups. Then you can also use that.
Tune it in oil instead of tune it in water.
Depending, but yeah, times, yeah. Just depending, because the tuna in oil, depending on the kind of oil they pack it in, if it's packed in olive oil, then that's great. So it's just really going to depend. And as far as if people are sweating a lot and things like that, then there's no substitute for just good old water. Just water, plain and simple. The problem is when people, they think they're doing their body a service by drinking Gatorade and things like that. Gatorade, yes, they're boosting their electrolytes, but there's so many other things in Gatorade that their body does not need. So
Makes you thirsty.
yeah. So just no substitute for plain old H2O.
Same thing for Red Bull.
Yeah, don't do that. No. All right, so we're gonna move over to our fats. Now, fats still important for our bodies, still important for cooking. There is a way though to cook without using fat. You just have to be creative. What you're doing if you're cooking without fat, because I have some clients who said they do not want the chef to use any sort of oil when preparing their meals. We tend to braise and simmer and poach whatever we're cooking for them. And usually we're using broths and wine to cook for them. But for the rest of us, fat can be our friend depending on the type of fat that we're using. Our body needs fat as well. Okay, so if we're talking about oils here, once again, not all oils are created equal, just like not all salts are created equal. These days, it's become very popular for people to use olive oil or avocado oil, canola oils are the ones that we hear the most about. Oil, a serving size of oil or fat is a tablespoon. And they all have 14 grams of fat per tablespoon, except for butter, which is 11. The difference is, okay, what kind of fat is it? So let's start with butter. A tablespoon of butter is 11 grams of fat. Over half of it is saturated fat. 7 grams of that is saturated fat. So that's your animal artery clogging fat. The remaining amounts is you do have maybe minimal amounts of unsaturated fats, but for the most part, it's mostly saturated fat. A lot has been said about coconut oil. People who are vegans or people who are doing keto, paleo, those types of diets, if you read the recipes, usually they're going to recommend cooking with coconut oil. The American Heart Association puts coconut oil on the list of the oils that you really want to avoid if you're looking at a heart healthy diet. Any oil, any fat that solidifies at room temperature is usually going to be very high in saturated fat. These days, the popular thing that I've been seeing is people are talking about cooking with beef tallow.
Yes.
And I'm just like,
Ghee.
yeah, now ghee is kind of in a different category because, and I'll talk about,
I wonder about that.
but beef tallow, I mean, come on, y'all, that's the fat from the. It may be very flavorful.
I think it's because of the carnivore. Is where he was finding.
Bacon.
That's pretty big. Yeah, that's not bad. I mean, we're going back to how my grandma, you see, but my grandma lived to be almost 103. And because the beef tallow and the bacon fat that she was eating for the majority of her life came from the hogs and the cattle, things that she grew in, that she raised and slaughtered herself. Same thing with the chickens. So there were no preservatives. It was just a more natural way of eating. Whereas these days you don't know what's in that. But yeah, I don't recommend going the route with the beef tallow and the bacon fat.
What's your perspective of lard?
Oh, lard goes into that category too. Yeah. Yeah.
Because in the preservation of meat, going back to because I've been studying a lot of the preservation of food issues from the Depression. And the way they used to store meat was they canned it in a jar. They put it in there and then covered it in lard and it would last for up to a year. So what are the complications of dealing with lard as preservatives?
Well, the problem is that lard is seeping into the meat. And so it's adding additional saturated fat to the fat that's already in the meat itself. So that's the problem. That's the problem with the lard. Once again, you hear, I always like to joke, everything's better with bacon, everything's better with butter. Lard is one of those things too, where it makes your pie crust flaky. It makes all of your baked goods taste so much better. The texture is so much better. But it is lard. Has a lot of saturated fat in it. There are some people that don't have to worry about, for whatever reason they're blessed, they don't have to worry about the amount of saturated fat that they're eating. But for the majority of us, it's something that we do need to focus on.
Is there any impact when people are working in disaster situations? They're exercising and expending a lot more energy than they do normally. Their metabolism is much more increased. Does that lessen the effect of saturated fats, or is that compensated in any way?
Well, you're talking about using a short term or a shorter term situation. It's not.
When I say short term, I mean, these may be lasting 30 to 90 days, a period of extreme exercise.
30 to 90 days, and you may be eating things that are higher in saturated fat because you are expending energy and because it is not their regular diet. I'm not as concerned about something like that as opposed to the part of someone's regular diet.
Sometimes a caloric increase and it has to go up by 50%. Otherwise, their body starts eating its own muscle. It gets protein from the muscle mass.
And for situations like that, just depending on, and you also have to look at the health of the person because everybody's different. If you have a person who has a family history or who already has high cholesterol or may have some cardiovascular issues, things like that, versus someone who doesn't have any of those issues, their additional calorie source may need to come from different things. So the person who may have strong issues, their increased caloric intake may need to be more plant-based, getting more calories from things like from beans and whole grains and things like that. Whole grains are still carbs; they're going to give them energy. Beans are high in protein, high in fiber. Same thing. Maybe less increased calories from animal fats and meats.
You see, that's the problem we have with survival rations. Most of commercial survival rations are based on a 2,000 calorie diet. If you're suddenly working and chopping wood all day and cleaning, you're hiking miles and everything, you may need 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day. Combat soldiers in heavy combat get up to 6,000 a day.
So it's just a matter of getting your calories from the right source.
So what do you consider the better sources?
The better sources are gonna be your lean sources of protein, like your chicken breasts, your salmons, sardines, and in situations like that, you can get sardines in a can, you're getting lots of you're getting lots of omega-3s and pack them in oil, you are getting some additional calories and fats from that, but it's a heart healthy fats.
Sardines are one of my primary recommendations there.
Sardines, canned salmon, canned tuna, canned chicken, canned turkey, canned beans, throw in some rice. They make quinoa in these little packs too. They also make whole grains, barley in these little packs too. So you don't have to, it doesn't always have to be white rice. You can get those sources of whole grains as well. They're making pasta in these as well too. So you can get the carbs from the pasta. So try and focus as much of it as possible, much of the calories from dried fruits, dried vegetables, your beans, all of those things in a can, and
Something you might want to know if you're counseling seniors is even in the military, you're not supposed to eat MREs for more than 2 weeks. Same thing with commercial brands like Mountain House. They are so loaded with preservatives that they can mess up your metabolism. As a matter of fact, in the VA, if you're a Vietnam veteran and you have diabetes, you get presented coverage that they assume you got it from the food that you fed in Vietnam.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people wanting to stock up on MREs, and that's not the best
It's
survival.
not the best product, yeah. So anything with the preservatives in it, it's just short term, but not long term. So we were talking about the coconut oil. This is the MCT oil, which a lot of people use on the health food kit. You notice they've processed this so that it does not solidify at room temperature. However, if you read the label, it's 14 grams of fat, 13 grams of saturated fat. This is just nothing but saturated fat. Now it's plant-based, but to me, it doesn't matter whether it comes from a plant or an animal, it's still saturated fat. All right, so then we've got things that have become more popular that are healthier for us. Your avocado oil has recently become very popular. It's also a lot more expensive though. And then your olive oil, from a nutrition standpoint, they're about the same, 14 grams of fat, 2 grams of saturated fat. The rest of it is heart healthy fat. So it's your mono and your poly unsaturated fats, which are going to tend to be your omega-3s, your omega-6s that are going to be for your body. Then we're talking about olive oil, in particular, extra virgin olive oil versus classic olive oil or light tasting olive oil. So your extra virgin olive oil usually is going to be in a darker bottle because it hasn't been processed as long and it's more sensitive to light. It's going to cause it to get rancid if it's exposed to light. Extra virgin olive oil tends to have a lower smoke point, which that is the point at which oil begins to burn. So keeping in mind, they try and help you out. They'll tell you the best use of the olive oil. So on this label, this one actually, this is a rarer form of extra virgin olive oil. Would you recommend that you can use it for sauteing or stir frying? Because it does have a lower smoke point. My recommendation is if you were going to be sauteing, frying, cooking at higher heats, I recommend using the olive oil. This is classic or light tasting. It's usually in a clear bottle like this, and the olive oil is usually, the classic is usually the color of this peanut oil. The lighter tasting is usually much lighter in color, like this canola oil. But usually the amount of fat is the same. It may be slightly lower in the mono and poly unsaturated fats, but from a cooking perspective, that's my recommendation. Use your extra virgin olive oil for things like drizzling on top of foods. You mentioned you've been drizzling it on your salad, or if you can. Now that you can bake with extra virgin olive oil very well, it actually is a great substitute for butter. in baking cakes and muffins, not in pie doughs, but cakes and muffins, you can use a high quality extra virgin olive oil and your baking comes out very, very moist. Salad dressings, definitely you want to use the extra virgin olive oil unless you have an aversion to that strong olive taste. And if so, use the classic or the light tasting. Then canola oil is the other oil that is also considered to be heart healthy. 14 grams of fat, only 1 gram of saturated fat in this particular bottle. And then it's the unsaturated fats add up to 12 grams. So very heart healthy. Here recently, I've been hearing and reading a lot about for some reason it's become very popular to not want seed oils. So your canola is considered a seed oil. You got sesame oil is considered a seed oil, safflower, grapeseed, so different seed oils. I've read different dietitians and dietitians say they're healthy for you. There's no issues there. It's more of a preference thing. The only reason why I bring that up is for some people, they do have problems. And it's fine if they don't want to use canola oil just because it tends to be it's a man-made oil. And it comes from seeds. And so that's why they tend to have an issue with it. Canola oil is great though for frying and cooking at high heats because it does have a high smoke point and it has a mild flavor. So canola oil, avocado oil, both have very mild flavors, high smoke points, great option. Peanut oil is also relatively heart healthy. It's 2.5 grams of saturated fat and 11 grams of the unsaturated fats, which are going to be your heart healthy fats. Peanut oil is excellent for frying. It has a very high smoke point, which is why people fry their turkeys at Thanksgiving and Christmas in peanut oil.
I'm a Scout leader. I've had the wilderness training program. We had to have a 4-hour class on peanut allergies. You got any information about that?
If you want to avoid peanut oil, if you have anyone that has any peanut sensitivities or peanut
I
allergies.
will tell you, this peanut oil is actually banned in Boy Scouts nationwide.
Okay,
It's not, we can't put it in trail mix or anything like that. And the stories, like, there was a girl that was eating a peanut butter candy bar at breakfast. She kissed her boyfriend in the afternoon. He went into anaphylactic shock and almost died. You know, and it's probably the worst thing let's put it this way. All peanut products are banned in Boy Scouts.
and that makes sense because you.
Talking about cooking 1,000 people.
My son, my grandson's school. I have to run. I'm so sorry to be so much. So good to see you. Nice to meet you all. Sorry, we didn't make it. And I got this form no longer.
You lied to us, you said.
I'll
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, all right. And then we have sesame oil. I already talked to you about the sesame oil. Great for Asian cooking. A little bit goes a long way. So yeah, I wouldn't use a whole 2 tablespoons or whatever. Because yeah, it's gonna be really strong. Once again, 2 grams of saturated fat. Another option is safflower oil. This is great for making popcorn. If you're gonna make popcorn the old school way, popping it on your stove, safflower oil is a great oil to use for popcorn. Once again, only 1 gram of saturated fat. The last thing is, as a chef, the one thing I hate the most is Pam. Anything that you spray and it makes you cough is not going to be good for you. Lots of chemicals in Pam. So I hate it for that reason. The other reason is the chemicals that they put in the Pam, it ruins your pots and pans. In particular, if you're cooking with non-stick pots and pans, it puts a coating on there that you won't be able to get out. So it cuts the life of your pans just about in half. So, but one thing that I do like about the concept of Pam is the ability to use less oil when you're sauteing things by misting your pan with the oil. Well, guess what? You can do that without using. They sell these things called mistos in the store and they have them on Amazon too, where literally you just take whatever oil you have, as long as it's liquid at room temperature. You fill this about half full with the oil and then you pump it to create an aerosol.
So that would be
Right.
safflower.
You can put safflower, olive oil, whatever kind of oil you typically cook with, you can cook with, you can put it in the misto. The other option is now they have actually started selling olive oil and avocado oil and canola oil in the can. Just make sure that the ingredient is just the oil and it doesn't have the additional chemicals. Now you can even find under the Pam brand, they are actually selling the pure oils. Once again, this is a great option, way for you to use less oil when you're cooking. The other thing that this is good for is just a little kitchen hack. Have you ever been using honey or molasses or maple syrup and you're trying to pour it out of the spoon and you end up having use another spoon to get it out of the spoon? Well, just spray your spoon or your measuring cup or whatever with a little bit of oil and then it's just gonna slide. It's gonna slide out. So that's another option for you. Any questions about the oils?
I have a suggestion for you.
Sure.
Something I've done in my own healthcare profile. I'm diabetic. And I found an article that listed all the natural herbs and spices that impact on blood sugar. I just mixed them all together and I put it in my chili and spaghetti sauce and stuff like that. And it cuts the blood sugar by up to 30%. And it's cumin, turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, black pepper, cayenne pepper.
Yeah, those are all helpful in keeping your blood sugar level.
So if you've got diabetics, you can suggest that to them.
Yeah, assuming they'll do the cumin and you'd be surprised how many seniors I have. That's one of the things, spices, no, I don't like cumin. I was like, okay, just love using cumin, but no, you're right, adding the cinnamon, the turmeric, things like that. Depending on what medications they're on, some medications don't mix so well with turmeric, so it's gonna depend, but for people who don't have those sorts of issues, you're right. Adding as many natural sources, rosemary is also great for that as well. So thank you for that. Well, I feel like I've done a lot of talking. Unless you guys have any additional questions about anything, this will be the end of my presentation.
Well, thank you.
We ask questions.
Well, thank you all so much. Thank you for having me. My contact information is it's on this sheet and it's also on the little info card that I gave you about Chefs for Seniors. If you know anyone in your communities who can benefit from the service, please feel free to pass along.
Do you ever service the assisted living communities?
Not the big ones because they usually have their own, they have their own kitchens, things like that. But I have assisted the small residential ones that are in a residential home. Actually, that's a very good source of revenue for me is outsourcing my chefs to them and having my chefs do the cooking so their caregivers can focus just on the caregiving.
It's so interesting. I've never heard of anything like this before, where you go to the actual task.
And I love doing it. People ask, well, you don't deliver? So no, I have no desire to deliver. We can't compete on a price point with delivery anyway, because there are too many additional moving parts.
And that's a feature for purpose, personal contact.
And once again, that defeats the purpose of also having a personal contact with the client. Yeah.
One quick question. Your fees. Can you go through those again?
Sure. So the fees depend on how often a client uses the service and the level of customization. But the range is anywhere from $165 to $205 for the service, and plus the groceries. the groceries, there's no
Oh, yeah.
upgrade, the groceries are a dollar for dollar reimbursement. We're not adding on any additional costs or fees, no markup on the grocery. And we also, if our clients, if we're going to the store, since they're reimbursing us, other things that they need us to pick up for them, like, they need toilet paper or toothpaste or, additional eggs, milk, things like that. We're more than happy to pick that up for them as well while we're out shopping, and it saves them a trip.
I do what you do. When I make my spaghetti sauce, I cut bunches of it and freezer or stuffed peppers. Yeah,
Yeah,
if you buy stuffed peppers, you can make maybe 3 out of 2 peppers or whatever. But so I have my own frozen kitchen.
yeah, yeah, at least that way you know what's going, what's going into your,
Yeah.
what's going into your food. Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you. It was very enlightening, very informative. Now I get to go home and cook.
Some information.
That's one of the things you put on the website, how to make your own survival, right?
With my usual phrase, if I tell you.
Most of the stuff, here during the hurricane, they just buy peanuts.